Hey everybody, I'm Petra from the Writers Company, and this is the third in the series of how to plot your novel. These are ways that you can get the bulk of stuff done before you actually start, so you don't get stuck in the middle, which happens to loads of us. So we're going to talk today about whose story is this anyway. What you've already done so far, and if you haven't, don't worry about it, just pause the video and spend a bit of time doing this, is you've got a one-sentence summary of your idea for the book and or a controlling idea. If you don't know what I mean, go back and look at the previous two videos, and then you probably have a knowledge of point of view. And if you don't have those, we've got 5 videos online to have a look. So very briefly, point of view, because I don't want to get too deeply into it. You are going to write the story probably from one of these 3 points of views. There are more, but these are probably the 3 that you're going to choose from. So the first one is first person, I. So the main character is speaking as themselves. I did this, I did that. Third person limited is another point of view you could choose, and that is he, she, he, it. Okay, so it's like first person, you're very close to the character. She went to the shop, she did this, etc., etc. Or you could choose the third person omniscient, which again is she, he, or it. But in this case, the narrator is able to fly around and go into one person's head and then go to another person's head and have a look over the whole situation and move it around. So those are probably the 3 that you're going to choose. So brush up on those because they're really important. So which one for your book? So you've got an idea, you've got the main idea, but who is going to tell this story? So there's 2 things we're looking at. It's whose story is it and who is going to tell this story. And the point of view you're going to choose will depend on 3 things. So the first thing it's going to depend on really is your preferred style. Maybe you can really enjoy writing in first person. It's like acting to you. You can write, you can really get into it. Maybe you prefer a more distant style when you are hovering overhead, going in and out. Now, obviously, as competent writers, you could probably do all 3. No question. But don't forget, you're going to be writing this book for a long time, so you have to enjoy it. So have a real think about what your preferred style is. But also take into account what will your plot allow. Now, this needs some thinking about. If you are writing a detective fiction and you want the reader to know something that the main character doesn't know, how are you going to get that information to them? You might have to do omniscient, you might have to do third person limited, swapping between various people. What will your plot allow? So have a think about that. And the third question, and what we're going to talk about today really, is whose story is this anyway? Whose story is it? If it's a group, then you're going to have to choose 1 or 2 protagonists really. But whose story is it? So we need to think about that. And once you've chosen whose story it is, who is representing the whole of the theme and the plot of this novel, then you want to think about how you're going to tell it. Now, if you've got one protagonist and it's her main story, say, I'm going to just choose her, and I've chosen a person here, don't know, let's call her Ankita. So Ankita, we've decided it's her story. So you've got a choice, haven't you? You've got her telling the story, and she could tell it in the first person. I did this, I did that. Or the author could tell it in the third person limited or third person omniscient. She did this, she did that. But it might not be the best idea. It might be great, but it might not be the best idea for her to tell her own story. It might be that you need an onlooker, somebody in the distance, somebody who's only on the periphery of the action telling about it. So that happens in The Great Gatsby. You know, we've got, what's his name? Nicholas, I think. Can't remember. Anyway, Nicholas tells the story of Jay Gatsby from afar. We don't really know much about him, but we learn about Jay Gatsby. So you might choose to do this. So have a think about that as well. Whose story is it, and who is going to tell the story? Now, if you're writing an omniscient, this isn't as important. But in limited third person and in first person, I need to know who is telling this story. What authority do they have to tell the story? Do we believe them as they tell the story? So there's lots to think about. And the other thing you need to think about is at what distance the story is being told. So here we have Ankita, and we know it's her story. Is the older Ankita looking back on the past and telling her own story? Or is Ankita telling it in the present? So what distance do you want? What do you want? How far away do you want this story to have happened? If you have it quite far away, a number of years, it allows for reflection, it allows for thinking about how you changed, etc., etc. If you have it in the very present, it's quite immediate. So these are just the things to consider. Don't get hung up about it. Some of it will emerge during the writing. But it's a good idea to think about it now, because it will save you time. I promise you, it will save you time deciding whose story is it, who is telling the story, and at what distance they are telling the story. So the other example I have of this guy looking at Ankita and telling her story, maybe he's an old guy looking back. So it's up to you, but think about these questions. So this is the important bit of this quick video and what I want you to think about. And I know it's easier for me to just say it than you do it, but it's worth considering, I promise you. Whose story is it? Who is telling the story? And from what distance are they telling this story? And I did this presentation on using the old presentation that I did before and just swap around all the images and everything. And this one was from the last presentation, but I think it shows that it's important here as well. So through this process, you are working out what is meaningful, where the heart of the story lies. It also highlights what is important to you as the writer. So that's what you're doing all the time in the preparation process. Who's telling the story? Whose story is it, and from what distance? And through that, you can work in plot and theme and ideas, but it's a gathering at the moment. You're just gathering all this information, and I will show you how to plot it in another quick video. But for the moment, have a think about these questions. Whose story is it? Who is telling the story, and from what distance? All right. I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.